very much for invitation, and I was happy to be helpful to the Sofia conference forum, and also Václav's library, which I happen to be a chairman of, is one of the organizers. And so let me stress at the very beginning that I and none of my colleagues, we didn't come here to lecture you Bulgarians how to deal with communist legacy, because we have certainly enough failures and troubles at home. I should also say that I really admire Bulgaria and your successes in transformation, and you guys certainly didn't have it easy, because one of the main differences, besides being on the periphery of European Union, which is definitely more complicated than to be situated in the heart of Europe, where geographic location itself is sort of predestination of your success and prosperity. When we entered in 2004, there were 5 more years, successive years of economic growth, of prosperity, because there was also economic growth and prosperity in western parts of Europe. And so we had a very happy inflow, not only of European transfer money and European aid money, but above all, we had a happy inflow of FDIs and all kinds of private investments. When you guys entered, the world was hit by the global financial crisis, and then it developed into a Eurozone crisis, a crisis of banking and stagnation and recession, and crisis again in the Western Europe. So there was no more happy inflow of FDIs comparable to what us and Slovaks and Poles were able to enjoy. So I'm not surprised that people here are a little bit more perhaps skeptical, a little bit more sentimental about old times, because I would wonder myself how it would have been in Czechoslovakia or in Czech Republic, Slovakia or Poland when we entered in 2003 and suddenly the world was struck by a major financial crisis like in 2008. I suppose there's also to be a colleague here from Germany, am I right? Is he coming or is cancelled?
I'm just told that he's sick.
So he's not coming.
So you can talk freely about the German experience and your own observations.
Yeah, I was just like one little observation that it's a pity that he is not here, because it would be interesting that he is coming, but which has to do with the transformation. Like, given all the failures, I am extremely proud and happy that me and my generation was able to experience the transition and to do it by doing a lot of mistakes and learning by these mistakes and failures. And we had a chance to build up our own institutions, not only institutions of the state, but also media. And we were like amateurs, all of us were amateur dissidents in politics, journalists with no proper journalism education, fortunately maybe. And but it was completely different in Eastern Germany. Eastern Germany was basically taken over by an older brother, and there were no like young journalists like myself who would be able to try to build their own magazine, knowing nothing about the market, knowing nothing about the advertising. The market was just taken over by Der Spiegel and it had a big market, so there was no chance to go and try your own institutions, which is very important for one's self-confidence, I believe. And the same goes about judiciary, the same goes about political parties, the same goes about every institution which takes, which is servicing the market economy, etc., etc. So there was a country full of amateurs which was experimenting, and we had a lot of mistakes on the way. But I'm glad that we had a chance to do these mistakes, because to me it's better to try on your own than to be taken over. And so this is just one remark about Germany. Unfortunately, we don't have a German speaker. I think it's also important to mention the role of, when we deal with the communist past, it's very important to mention the role of certain aspects of privatization in Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, because one of the most important and the most effective tools of privatization was restitution of the stolen property, made mainly of real estates, apartment buildings, etc. Joint stock companies were not restituted, only small companies, family companies, if they still had some kind of location which was holding together. But mainly real estates and agriculture and apartment buildings. But it was only about part of the economy. The part of the economy was restituted. The stolen property was given back to the original owners, mainly their heirs. But it sent an important signal, because it sent a signal. Not only it was an effective tool of privatization, because immediately new owners were able to rent the property in their old buildings and start some services themselves, or rent it to some entrepreneurs who were willing to enterprise in this space. But it also sent a very important social signal that the nationalizing property is not the right thing to do, and what was stolen is supposed to be given back. So it also was an important political signal about dealing with the past. Then we had so-called Lustrace, or screening, mentioned here, and I think that it was also very important to send a signal that people with a certain past and people on particular positions of a former regime, meaning not all the members of the Communist Party, only high-level members of the Communist Party, chiefs of organizations, members of Negova militia, which was a military, paramilitary organization of Communist Party, and secret agents and members of secret police are not permitted to hold certain position in state administration from a certain level up. But the law was constituted in a different way. The law was about the conditions which everyone who aspired for a certain position in the state administration has to fulfill, and one of the conditions was not to be a secret police cooperator, secret police officer, or member of the Communist Party for a certain level up. We still have this law in place, but I doubt myself like how much important and effective it is at the time. But I think that it was one of the successes of Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia that it implemented this law in time without everlasting and complicated disputes about it. But it wasn't obviously black and white simple, because certain agents of secret police, especially agents of military service, etc., were not. The list of agents were not at disposal, or were somewhere else in Moscow, perhaps. So it wasn't like so smooth, etc. Another aspect of it, which I don't like myself much, was sort of like spontaneous or illegal, basically, publishing of the list. No, it wasn't illegal, but let's say spontaneous publishing of the list of the agents, which had nothing to do with the conditions about state administration. There were like whole newspapers with lists of names of people, and it just said like the timing when you became a cooperator of the secret police and your whatever nickname, but it didn't say anything about. In some of the cases, your file existed. In some of the cases, your file didn't exist. In some of the cases, only parts of the files were recovered. So I myself wasn't that supportive of publishing of these lists because it say nothing about the particular people. You don't know the story. Unless I myself know about a particular person that he was really doing something resentful or something really bad or to his friends, etc. It's a zero. It's a zero information about his character that he is on the list. It just doesn't have anything to do. But society somehow demanding these lists, and it was actually interesting that in the 70s and 80s, most of the population was actually very obedient. I don't want to say like cooperative, but at least 99.99% of people, as I said, participated in puppet communist elections. But suddenly, everyone was happy if they found their neighbor on the list of agents, and they could point him at him that he was a secret collaborator. It was very typical for members of the Communist Party, for those so-called pragmatic members of the Communist Party, who never felt like communists. They just did it. They just entered because they wanted to be successful in their careers. So these very people were pointing at particular people that they were secret police agents, even though many of the members of Communist Party didn't need themselves to become agents, because if you were a member of the Communist Party, it was basically clear that, like a member of the Communist Party, you have to cooperate with the agents. So to be also an agent, even though it was also sometimes happening or often happening, if you are a member of the Communist Party, it's clear that you are also have to be obedient if you are asked to cooperate with the regime. So that's about the sort of like hidden phase of spontaneous screening and publishing of the list. Then there is a question of communist elites becoming successful entrepreneurs and leaders in the economy. So it's not actually very surprising, because being a dissident, former dissident myself, I know that this is like the worst input you can have to become a successful entrepreneur or something like that. You know, like some of the dissidents most of the dissidents were working in manual jobs, and they were reading the books, and they were educated in philosophy and poetry, maybe. Given the fact that Czech political opposition is always very connected with culture, and culture is replacing politics in Czech history. So most of the dissidents are forbidden writers and poets and musicians, etc., etc. And you certainly cannot expect these people to become successful entrepreneurs in a newly created market economy. So it's clear that these sort of communist elite, which was in enterprises of sort of like foreign exchange and foreign trade enterprises, which were like there were like few monopoly organizations in particular field of industries like straw import, straw export, exporting or manufacturing, importing, manufacturing, textile, food production. So these were like communist elites who were speaking languages, and all of them were on the list of agents. It was a condition, but they knew how to do the business. they spoke languages. Perhaps we could speak in English about philosophy, but we certainly couldn't speak about business. So it's absolutely not surprising that these particular elites took over the economies sooner or later. Some of them through spontaneous way, automatically, some of them using different like fraudulent methods, but they just, it's nature. It's certainly clear that it couldn't have been the dissidents, Czech dissidents, above all. I think when we speak about dealing with the communist past, my impression is that it is certainly underestimated that we should, if we are trying to educate the young generation about the communists, and this is what was happening above all by the previous governments, it's a little bit more suppressed by current government, which is led by Social Democrats. It is, everyone is being taught about the horrors of communism, about executions and concentration camps and some of the very terrible personal stories and stories of some families, etc. But I think we should also speak more about what led to the popularity of communism even before the Second World War in Czechoslovakia, after the Second World War. Obviously, communists they're like very cynical propaganda, and they were like very smartly appealing on envy, and they were definitely very evil. But on the other hand, there was, we shouldn't forget that there was a giant big depression, there was high unemployment, there were high social inequalities, etc., etc. And we should also speak about this, how it is possible that in a country which is located, its capital is located west of Vienna, like 300 kilometers west of Vienna, how come that communism was so popular in this country? So we should be more careful about not repeating all these mistakes, and I think it's a good example when we speak about drugs. If there is a sort of attempt to educate people about drugs, it's always about how drugs are horrible, how you end up on the street and you are dirty and you are shaking. But we should also speak about the drug, what is dangerous about the drugs. The drugs are at first like very pleasant. It's amazing, you enjoy yourself, you are very self-confident, people don't recognize that you are on drugs, etc. So if you are trying to warn young people against drugs, you should speak about the danger of these phases when you feel very good, actually. So, and not about that you are lying on the sidewalk and you are dirty and homeless and toothless, etc. This is not going to help you. So and this is the same about communism, because if you would speak only about the concentration camps and about the executions and this and that, people would say, how come that anyone could be ever supportive of this? But the reason people were supportive and very naive was that they were perhaps very disappointed about the failures of the economy and society before, and we should be more interested in it. I should also mention that what I myself don't like is that this education about communism is focusing too much only on sort of like hard levels of cooperation, but it should be focusing also of more like soft cooperation of most of the population with the regime. So I was speaking about high-ranking members of the Communist Party, but we have to realize, as I mentioned before, 99.99% of Czechoslovakian population participated in these unfree, puppet, fake elections every 4 years, and there was no suppression for not going there. Okay, you more or less became some kind of a dissident, by not going, you were, especially when you lived in a small town or something, but it wasn't illegal. So most of the population cooperated. It was considered that it's clear that everyone is a member of the communist organization, all the young people, especially students. Everyone was a member of puppet trade unions and ROH. Everyone was a member of, well, not everyone, but once again, 99% of the population were members of this SCSP, like Union of Friendship with Soviet Union, and etc., etc. And there is not enough talk about us. We are all still the most of the talk about the past is focusing on the Communist Party and secret police. And when we speak about secret police, we still have a discrepancy that we are speaking more about agents and not about the officers themselves. So, in a popular view, the biggest evildoer is somehow an agent and not an officer himself. So this is also insane, and I don't think that understanding of this is improving much. And when I speak about heritage of communism, and in this respect we still certainly are not any better than Bulgarians, or even worse maybe. So I think that one of the victims of communist regime, and we still didn't recover, is a killing of an art of discussion, of dialogue. Discussion is like doing business. We are supposed to do business, not to steal from one another, but when two entrepreneurs are doing business, they are supposed to enrich each other through mutually successful contracts. And that's what, by the way, is causing economy to grow, that most of the contracts which are realized in the economy are advantageous for both sides. And this should also be about dialogue, about discussion. But still, in our parts, it's that the discussion is about killing an opponent, about winning. And but this is a heritage of communism, because communism was supposed to kill class enemy or this and that, but somehow it's still prevailing in our politics. If you look at political discussion on Czech TV, it's like, no, you are lying, no, you are lying, you are lying, not you are lying, I have my statistics, no, I have my own statistics, you are a liar, and this is a very, so this is one of the heaviest, like, heaviest burdens of communist heritage. It also has to do with integrity, that especially 70s and 80s after the Soviet occupation in Czechoslovakia were very morally crippling, because in most of the families people were taught not to, people criticized communist feeling, but they were telling their kids, like, you don't speak about it in school, etc., be very careful. So, but this is still normal, obviously, to an extent it's normal behavior in every corporation in every country, but it is multiplied in Czech Republic definitely. The people are sort of used to the fact that they speak to one person and they tell them opinions, and they go around the corner and they have completely different opinions speaking to someone else, and then they go again around the corner and they have a third opinion. So, sort of lack of sense that you have to have some integrity, and if you have an opinion, it's an opinion for everybody. So this is also very unfortunate heritage of communism, that it will take a long time before we get rid of it. And another very unhappy thing is like lack of, and it is getting better, especially as far as young generation is concerned, lack of care of the public space. So the communism sort of taught us that people are taking care of their whatever cottages and gardens. Then it improved in a sense that people are really taking their fates in their hands, and they are, a lot of people are successful entrepreneurs, etc., etc. but people don't take care about the public space. They think that capitalism is about taking care of oneself or your family, but it is not that the sort of culture society is recognized about the way you take care of the public space. So it's so this is also, it's gonna take generations before we get more to the sort of Western or civilized level in it. And it is kind of obvious that heritage of communism, especially in Czechoslovakia, is also part of our corruption program, because there was a slogan under the communists that who doesn't steal, steals from his family, and this is still somehow like it just naturally transferred itself into into current conditions. So I think that's enough, and maybe something a little bit more in the discussion.
Thank you so much.